students, and welcome to another week in tech. For this week, what we're going to do is we're going to actually play a tic-tac-toe game. So this is the game board that we have set up here in front of you. So the way this works is tic-tac-toe is a really simple, straightforward game. You've all have played it before. It's just made with X's and O's. Very, very simple, very straightforward. Now, I've also enlarged my cruiser so you can see it a little bit better. But we're going to play a quick game of interactive tic-tac-toe. Just show you how it goes. Start with O's. We'll go X. Make an O here. And let's see, I'll start my X going there. Make an O here. Or highlight here. Go that way. Make an X there. Make an O there. Oh, look at that. O wins. And so as you can see, when you get 3 in a row, you get 1 win. Also, the board color changes along with the different values that are being used. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to set up this spreadsheet on our own and figure out how it's done. Now, if you saw at the beginning of the video, I hid some of the cells. So unhide those so you can see. So you can do that by changing your text color to white. It actually helps so that you're not deleting text, but it doesn't show up on the broader spreadsheet here. There's also some formulas in here that we're going to be using. And I'll explain those in a little bit. There's some longer formulas here for deciding who wins. And these will actually be even longer than this if you want to make the full game. All right, but I'll show you the basics and we can start from there. All right. So we're going to make a new spreadsheet. So what you should do is go into your spreadsheet, make a new one. I'm going to merge these cells here. There's a little merge cell button right over here. Merge cells, and we're going to just call this tic-tac-toe. All right, so all you need to do is create a new spreadsheet, and you're going to call it tic-tac-toe. All right. What you can also do is in your drive, my drive is very full, but what you can do is you can create a new folder. You can put all these files in. We'll call this Tech 206. We've got to find it. Yep, right here. Now I'm in this folder, and I can go to my new spreadsheet that I just created. And I can move that into that folder. Tech 206. All right, so now we have our file where we need it, and we're going to move on to our next step. So the next step is creating the game board. Now this is a little bit tricky, and you need to remember where your game board actually is on your spreadsheet. So you're going to go a 3x3 board. It's going to be 9 squares total. And we're going to add some conditional formatting to this. So while I still have this selected before I actually do my conditional formatting, I'm going to create a border around. So we can do outer borders, create a border around what we're doing. And then we're going to go into our conditional formatting. So if text contains, you can switch that to text contains over here. And the value we're going to use is O. And we're going to make that be green. And we're going to add another rule. And if the text contains an X, we're going to change that to, let's go red. Do something a little different here. All right, so if the text contains O, it's going to be green. If the text contains X, it's going to be red. And we see that we have C6 through E8 highlighted here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy that value because we're going to need that value somewhere else. All right. So we have our rules. The next thing I'm going to do, so now when I enter in an X, turns red. When I enter in an O, turns green. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is, and just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to put this right next to the board. I'm going to make these 9 cells here are going to actually contain my data for what's actually going on inside of the cells. All right. So within this data, what we can do is we can say this piece of code right here. And what I'll do along with the video is I'm actually going to include the text for these statements. All you have to do is change the actual information inside. I'll explain how that works in a little bit. So I'm going to do this. And to change the information, I'm going to select this D5. We're actually starting with C6 right now. C6, all right? And I also need to make sure that this says C6 as well. All right, I'm going to highlight the cells above this. I'm going to merge these two just to give us a little more context here. I'm going to say these are my X's. All right. So if there's an X, what it does is it takes the total length of the cell and it takes every single X and it actually will count the number of X's in that cell. There's an easier way to do this. This is just one way to do it so that if I type in, it would actually say 6 here. This formula is very useful for just counting mechanisms, so I'm going to include that formula in there as well. And if I do something like this, it'll tell me 1 because there's still an X in that cell, right? Okay, so it just takes the total length minus the length without the X's, if that makes any sense. All right. So that's for the first cell. What we can do is we can actually use that trick I showed you during cohort, which is stretching the cells. And this will copy over for each individual cell. So we have C7 here. If I select C7, it'll tell me what cell is actually being highlighted. So we can do that. And then we can go across. So just highlight everything down, just click and drag. And you're going to use that blue box in the bottom right-hand corner, and you're just going to drag that over 2 more. So this will just show if I'm playing a game here. Boom. So we have all the diagonals highlighted with the X's. All right. So those are my X's. Next, I'm going to make my O's. So I'm going to merge these as well. You don't necessarily have to do the merging part. This just helps me to see where everything is. If it helps you, go for it. All right. So now we have our O's. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this text here from this first cell. So that's the G6 cell, it looks like. We're going to copy that. I'm going to paste this information here. The only difference is, in my pasted information, I'm going to change that X to an O. So this is for every O that we have. So now if I put an O in that space, this changes to 1 and that remains at 0. Okay? Now I'm going to do the same thing, copying this down and copying it over. Now if I put an O in this last square, we can test our code here to see if it works. And it works. So now we have all of these pieces of data here. What I can do, just to make things a little bit nicer for those playing the game so it's not so monotonous, is I can change the text color over here to 0, or to white text. So the information is still there in the cells, right? But you just can't see what's going on, all right? So next I'm going to have the wins columns. So who's actually winning the game? So let's say we have X wins. I'm just going to put the text here, X wins and O wins. All right. There's another piece of data that I'm actually going to put in here. This is an if statement with an or statement inside of it. So the way this works, and first I have to make sure that we're highlighting the right columns here, right? So we're starting with that G6 and we're going all the way through I8. So G6 through G8, H1, and we'll go on like that. And you actually can use different combinations to show what diagonals you're using. But we'll get to that in just a moment here. So if, I'll just use that G6 through G8. and we'll do that for each one. I6, oh, H6 through H8. And we'll do the last one, which is I6 through I8. All right, so you have all of those. So if any of these three columns, if the sum of the data inside of them, that's where we have sum here, is greater than 2, so that means it's 3, then we're actually going to say that that value wins. So we can test this out. X wins, all right? And just make sure, just for a rule of thumb, these are case-sensitive cases over here in this column where we have our text here. So make sure that that's case-sensitive. So if you're using capitals, just use capitals. If you're using lowercase, use lowercase, okay? All right. So we're going to do the same thing for O. And what I can do actually here is I'm going to do Control, I will copy it this way with the actual text, just highlight the text there. And I can paste that text. And what I can do is I can change the values to fit these columns here in this area. So we have this is for X, and I'll actually highlight these. Just a crafty rule of thumb here. Borders really help you to see what's going on, especially when you're using code and you can't really see it until something happens. Borders really help you to see where that information is. I'm actually going to do just an overall border so we can see, okay, there's some information that needs to go in that space. All right. So with that being said, we're going to change this information over here to fit the information down there. So we're going to go G10 through 12 here. All right. See what it's highlighting, and we're good. And do 10 through 12. And it's nice to have these line up. Just makes everything easier. I10 through 12. All right. And we're going to change this final statement here to say O wins. All right. So now if we have any O's, and as of right now, we're just doing vertical. All right. So what you can also do inside of this OR statement is, let's say I want to have a diagonal here. I can do sum, and I can do this diagonal, comma, comma. Let's see if we can get all of our data here. It's actually overlapping the area that I'm looking for here, but I think that's going to be H11. If that sum is greater than 2 as well. All right. So now what we can do is we can test that out to see if that also works. So we have O, capital O, O wins as well. So you can do diagonals in there too. So the way you would do the diagonals, just pointing this out here, is you'd be selecting those 3 particular ones in the diagonal. And you can do the diagonal the other way, and you can go across. So what you get is you get this really, really long OR statement between all of these different ones. All right? Does that make sense? So, yeah, so you'll have the vertical columns, then you can go across and do horizontal columns as well. And then you can go diagonally and do diagonals. And all you have to do at the end is say O wins, comma, O wins. So after this whole OR statement, comma, O wins in parentheses, comma, and then if nothing happens, we can say just a space, or I can just say no winner. Say no winner yet. So this is just to show you how the whole statement looks. It's no winner yet, And that'll keep happening until we get a winner. And then it will change right away. Boom, O wins. All right. So you see how that works? So yeah, this is going to end up being a very long statement. Remember, syntax is very, very important here. So you have the if statement on the outside, parenthesis beginning, parenthesis ending. Then you have the or statement. This just says everything in here, it's either or. So either this happens, or this happens, or this happens, or this happens. Okay? And these are all statements. So the sum of this is greater than 2. All right? And then you have your results. Okay? This is the positive result saying if this happens, this is the outcome. This is the negative result saying if this is not happening, this is what you're actually going to see. Okay? So that's really the basis for the game. Just setting up these formulas and having them run. And you can get creative with it. So you can have something like, oh, we can play 4 corners too. And then you can set it up so you can say if the sum of this one, this one, this one, and this one is greater than 4, or sorry, greater than 3, you can have a 4 corners game as well. So there's different ways that you can do it. See if you can get a little bit creative. But for the basis now, we just want to at least make the vertical columns make a win. And let's say we can do horizontal as well and maybe diagonal if you get around to it. But for next week, what I want you to submit, what you're going to do is you're going to go into the folder here where you have Tech 206. You're going to go to Share. And you're going to share it with the ITA TTI help desk. All right. And you're just going to share that whole folder with your file inside of it. Okay? So that's really it for this week. If you have any questions, make sure to email me or contact me and let me know what those questions are, and we'll try to help you as soon as possible. That's it for tech, and signing off.